Hello my friends, welcome back to these tutorials about Git. In this video, I want to explain what distributed version control means so we can understand why this is such an important feature of Git. And before Git version control system like CVS or SVN use a central code repository model. That is that there is one central place where you store the master copy of your code, and when you're working with the code, you check out a copy from the master repository, you work with it, make your changes, and then you submit those changes back to the central repository. And other users can also work from that repository, submitting their changes. And it's up to us as users to keep up to date with whatever is happening in that central code repository, and to make sure that we pull down and update any changes that other peoples have made. Git doesn't work that way. Git is a distributed version control. Uh, that is, it's different users or teams of users each maintain their own repository instead of working from a central repository. And the changes are stored as changes sets or patches. And we are focused on tracking changes, not the versions of the documents. Now that's a very subtle difference, and you may think, well, CVS or SVN, those also track changes too, but they don't. They track the changes that it takes to get from version to version of different files or different states of a directory. Git doesn't work that way. Git really focuses on these change sets in encapsulating a change set as a discrete unit, and then those change sets can be exchanged between repository. So we are not trying to keep up to date with the latest version of something. Instead, the question is, do we have a change set applied or not? So there is no single master repository. There is just many working copies, each with their own combination of change sets. Let me give an illustration to make this clear. So imagine that we have changes to a single document as sets version 1, version 2, version 3 till version 6, and we are just going to give them arbitrary name, a letter name, so that we can help visualize it much better. So we could have a first repository that has all 6 of those change sets in it, and we can have a repository 2 that only has 4 of these changes in it. So it doesn't mean that the repository 2 is behind repository 1 or that it needs to be brought up to date. It's just simply that it doesn't have the same change sets. We can have a repository 3 with only version 1, version 2, or version 4, or we can have a repository with version 1, version 2, version 6, and at later point of time we can add version 7 to this repository 4, and we can easily merge it to any other repository like repository 3 or 2 or 1. So, whereas with CVS or SVN, for example, you would need to submit those changes to the central server, and then people would need to pull down those changes to update their versions of the file. So now, by convention, we often do designate a repository as being a master repository, but that's not built into Git. It's not a part of Git architecture. That's just a convention that we say, okay, there is a master one and everyone is going to submit their changes to the master one. We're going to try all stay in sync from that one, or we don't have to. We can actually have 3 or 4 different masters uh, versions that have different versions, different features in them, and we could all be contributing to those equally and just swapping changes between them. Now, because it's distributed, that has a couple of advantage. It means that there is no need to communicate with a central server, which makes things faster, and it means that no network access is required to submit our changes, which can work. We can work on an aeroplane, for example, and or when we don't have access to internet, which makes it pretty fast. And there is no single point of failure with SVN or with SVN or CVS. If something goes wrong with that central repository, that can be a real showstopper for everyone else who is working off that central repository. With Git, we don't have the problem of losing our work if central repository goes down. Everyone can keep working. They have each got their own repository that they are working from, not just a copy that they are trying to keep in sync with the central repository. And it also encourages participation in forking of projects. And this really is important in open source community because developers can work independently. They can make changes, do bug fixes, or they can start working independently on anything. If you don't like how an open source project is going on, you can fork it and you can try to take it into some other direction as well. That is what we see in many open source projects which use Git. So this was about distributed version control of Git, which gets people confused. So I hope you will like it and I hope you will subscribe. Thank you.